I always do that. I forgot to push the button, and I forgot to go live on Facebook. Were you planning on going live on Facebook also? This might be a good time to turn it on as well.
Yes, I'm starting. Sorry, Faisal.
I've done about 250 Zoom sessions since the COVID started. Anyway, maybe I should re-welcome people who are joining us now, since people are going to be seeing the recording are going to miss the earlier part of the discussion. Nonetheless, I haven't really said much that's worth anything yet, so we can resume from this point. So I was saying that, you know, as Palestinians, we've never been in as bad a situation as we are now. And you're living it, so you're probably more aware of it than I am even. And all the doors have been closed in our faces, and all the friends have turned into allied with our enemies, and so we're just hanging in the wind, like they say in English. Yeah, يعني احنا بين حانة ومانة رحنا بالعربي يعني. Nobody's is really paying attention to us. Nobody's taking care of us. We have to figure out how to stand up for ourselves, as we've done in the past, and continue that. So when we look at our situation, we are divided into a lot of slices and morsels of geography in almost all the areas where we exist. And I'm just going to share a couple of maps with you just quickly here, just so that we have an idea of what we're talking about. So you're probably familiar with the area A, B, and C. And so the dark reds is areas where we think we have control over ourselves, which is basically an illusion probably. And the area that's pink, this is areas where we have less control. And the yellow area is the area where our land is being stolen right now from underneath us. So in the middle of all that, there's the separation walls. There is also hundreds of checkpoints, and there's all kinds of things that prevent our movement. You know, we can't go from one place to another without going through hell and the humiliation on a daily basis. So we're not able really to communicate and move as if we were one nation. There are different flavors of these maps that none of them look good. You know, this one is worse than the other, and if you put that in motion over time, it's obvious that things are getting worse. At the end of, you know, we're going to become like Indian reservations in the United States. You know, people go there to see like tourist sites. Here's Gaza. The people in Gaza can't really go to the West Bank. They can't go to Ramallah easily without standing in line for 3 days and without, you know, filling out 600 forms and waiting months to do that. In the West Bank, we got all these refugee camps all over the place, and we got challenges in terms of communicating. This is Jordan, where we have a couple of million Palestinians there. They're not really in very easy contact with other Palestinians in Gaza or in the West Bank. And then we have Palestinians in Syria, and these are refugee camps among the Palestinians there. And then there you go in Lebanon, all these refugee camps. People can't even get out of the camps to work or get jobs or anything like that, and so forth. So the situation is such that we are divided. The geography is not our friend. The geography is acting against us and preventing us from feeling that we are one nation. And you noticed I forgot one area, which is really typical of this kind of situation. The forgotten people among the Palestinians are the people who live in Area I. And what do you think Area I is? Area I is the Palestinians of 1948. They're the ones in Haifa and Akka and Nasra and Jaffa. Those also are not easily reachable from other Palestinian areas. And there's almost 2 million people there that are part of Palestine, but they are geographically removed. And if somebody in the West Bank wants to marry somebody in Haifa, for instance, good luck. It's one of the nightmarish administrative paperwork process that may take you may die before you get the right to live with your wife in Haifa or with your spouse there. So obviously, this is not a sustainable situation. It's not going to get us anywhere. So one of the ideas that I have been dreaming about for a while is, what if we forget about the geography? And let's think, since the geography is not a strength for us, let's try to find what things can give us some avenues which we can make progress and try to become a single nation like we used to be before 1948 and before 1886 or whatever, when Zionism started and they started dividing us up and cutting up pieces of us. So the idea that the pandemic brought intrigued me quite a bit, and I started thinking, well, how do we deal with geography? And the only way right now we can deal with that geography problem is for us to go to the cyberspace, to start thinking, how do we become one nation from cyberspace? Like in Facebook, when you find a bunch of people that you guys are in the same ideas and you want to remain in touch and become kind of cohesive together, you set up a Facebook group and people join the group, and all of a sudden we have 1,000 people who are interested in walking in the mountains or something like that, and they find that something really useful, and it creates some sort of a community of people who are interested in one thing. Well, so that's just a small example. So, but how do we do this at a large scale for like 10 million people? So the idea is we start using cyberspace as a means for us to congregate and to join together and become a group in cyberspace. And how do we do that? And why would we want to do that? Well, first of all, the world is changing. In 20 years, 10 years, 20 years, none of what we're used to now is going to be there. Things are going to be quite different. The world is going to operate differently. And you can bet that a good part of what's going to happen in the world is going to happen in cyberspace. Paper is going to be less and less used to provide information to people. By the year 2040 or 2050, people will not be writing by hand anymore. Handwriting will become some sort of an esoteric art that only some people will be able to practice and do or find useful. I can't just imagine what the world is going to look like by the year 2030, 2040, 2050. So how do we prepare ourselves now for what's going to be in 2050 and 2040? Because you guys are young enough that most of you will still be living in 2040 and 2050. I will not be there, but you guys have the honor of being there, and God help you. We don't know what the world is going to be like. We don't even know if the environment is going to hold up till the year 2050. So just to let you know that I'm not the only one thinking about this. I just want to show you one image here that I'm just as smart as the other people around, and maybe smarter than they are. Take a look at this. What do you think Facebook is doing that for? Why are they changing their name to Meta? And what does that mean? They're thinking the same thing. They're thinking what they were doing in Facebook isn't really gonna cut it long term, and they have to change their thinking because the world is changing and they needed a new mousetrap. Their current mousetrap is not gonna work down the road. Of course, I'm not gonna turn this into a discussion of Facebook and Meta and what it means and all that. You guys can research that. But the idea is the smart minds in the world are thinking differently, and they're thinking that the world is going to be different. So how do we get Palestine to take advantage of that? And how do we use the opportunity of the technology to solve our problems? And our biggest problem, of course, is the geography problem. Put the political issues aside, but we're just challenged geographically and can't get together. We're like a lake that got divided by putting 600 or 7,000 structures in the middle of the lake, and the lake became a series of little canals instead of a big lake. So we need to find a way to get back the lake in itself and get rid of all the obstacles in it so that it's one big sea. And to do that, first of all, we need to create a massive secure database. And that database would have information about every Palestinian in the world. Just think, if we have a database of 10 million Palestinians, think of the power that can give us. In 5 minutes, we can reach 10 million Palestinians and send a message to them. We decide to hold elections. We can hold elections in 6 minutes. If we have a database of 10 million Palestinians. If we have everybody in that database send a letter to every member of Congress, we can have 500 million emails go to Washington at the same time. We can shut down the traffic on the internet. So the idea is the minimum we need to do is to get everyone on the same page, and I mean that literally, as well as figuratively. How do we do that? Well, it's not rocket science, like they say. It is science, but not rocket science. The technology exists today for creating a massive database that is secure, that can be accessed by hundreds of thousands and millions of people. Look at Facebook has 3.5 billion users. So it shouldn't be hard to create a platform that gives access to 10 million people. So if every Palestinian voluntarily joins the database and becomes part of it, we begin to have a very massive presence of people, because in the future, it's not going to be the masses of people gathered in the streets. It's going to be the masses of information and data that is sitting out there in cyberspace. That's where the action is going to be. And that's where people are going to bump heads with data and with technology and with information and the ability to disseminate information and gather information and use that information. In addition to that database, we can begin building our institutions in cyberspace. We begin building our museums, our universities can exist in cyberspace. All the information about the universities can be stored in cyberspace online, all the course offerings, all the teachers' notes, all the curricula, everything that you need to have, short of like, you know, the soccer field and the basketball courts, can be in cyberspace. So we can build our institutions in cyberspace. We can build our information, our intellectual property assets. We have so many educated Palestinians, and they're all talented, and they're all excelling in their fields, and they're all able to participate in this process of creating the new Palestine in cyberspace. And we could have, you know, people who work in medicine create medical information structures and medical institutions in cyberspace. And all that can be part of one existence, one entity, one presence in cyberspace. And it will have tremendous amounts of data, tremendous amount of information, and can be made, can be taken advantage of it. Wouldn't you like to know how to contact all the people that you know very easily in one place, so that you don't have to go to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and this and that? We could have our own Palestinian platform that would have all that information in it. And the possibilities are endless once you reach that point of presence in cyberspace, and we will be able to take advantages of all kinds of situations and opportunities and do all kinds of data mining, discover all the talents that people have, being able to challenge them into things that are very, very useful. Now, as I think down the road into the future, there would come a time where an entity like I'm talking about can then apply for membership to the United Nations as a virtual nation. We could be the first virtual nation to make an application for membership to the United Nations. The United Nations will be quite, you know, they'll be confused if they get an application from a nation that calls itself Palestine in cyberspace, that wants to be a cyberspace member in the UN. That they would have to have all kinds of meetings and all kinds of committees and debate and this and that. And then, of course, everybody will dismiss the idea first. But then as other people imitate what Palestinians might do and start doing the same thing, then, you know, at some point, the UN and other institutions, if they want to be viable around in the future, they have to be able to operate and function in that kind of environment. They can no longer ignore the massive things that are going on in the world. Just like Facebook, with all its might, realized that things had to change and they need to have new thinking and new ideas. And they changed their name. I mean, Facebook is one of the most valuable brands. It's one of the most valuable intellectual properties as a name. And they decided to forego that name and come up with a new name because they see a very critical need to recognize some things that are changing and they're happening in a different way in the future. So we need to be just as smart as they are, maybe even smarter than they are, and try to figure out how do we make that work? How do we take advantage of that? So this is just the idea. There's all kinds of avenues to it, the discussions, and they're obviously, this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow, maybe the day after, but so I would just want to throw that out there, and I'd like to hear some discussions with you. And if you don't ask questions, I can go on forever, you know. But I used to be a teacher, so I know how to talk and do that.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you, Ustaz Faisal. Thank you so much for this very inspiring opening notes for our discussion. I just want before I return it to Beverly for questions, we're going to alternate between our participants on via Zoom and also for us here in person. But I just want to say that I want to thank you so much for the very inspiring event that you held just a couple of days ago, الحياة المحظورة in Kufr Na'meh. That was really amazing, and I think it was a part of translation of what you have been thinking about. But before we start the questions or listening to the questions from our audience, and I have a question, Ustaz Faisal, for you. You are dismissing geography, but the foundation of our struggle against Zionism or against the Israeli occupation is land. So if we are going to regard this issue, how are we going to have a virtual state as you are dreaming?
I'm not saying we should dismiss the geography. What I'm saying is that we should examine our situation, what are our assets and what our liabilities are, and let's work with our assets, not try to use our liabilities to fight our enemy. We need to use focus on our assets. Now the geography is there, and it's important, obviously. And I'm by no means I'm advocating that we stop, holding onto our land and defending every shibra of it. I'm saying that let's do that, but while we're doing that, let's think of the future and let's start working for the future now. I'm not saying let's give up by no means. But what I'm saying is that our ability to change the presence is limited, and we're not just fighting one obstacle. We're fighting millions of obstacles. In Arabic, there's a line of poetry, and excuse my grammar if I butcher it. لو كان سهما واحدا لاتقيته ولكنه ثان وثالث ورابع. It's not just one little problem we're dealing with. We're dealing with a myriad of problems, and we have to start working in areas where we can make an impact at the same time while still holding our ground. By no means we still have to fight for every stone in Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan and in the Hebron Hills and in the Jordan Valley and in Area C and Area B and Area whatever. But we need to start building Area X. Let's call it Area X. And Area X is the cyberspace. We have to stake our claims to the land in the cyberspace as well, because that's in the future, that's where the action is going to be. That's where the rubber are going to meet the road in the future, and we can't be left out of that. We have to be leaders among all the nations in taking that, because we have the technology, we have the human resources to do that, and we should get on with it.
Thank you, Beverly. I turn it to you, and then we'll take questions from here. You're muted, Beverly.
That happens to me. Thank you, Saida and Faisal. I don't see any questions yet in the chat, so I'll just ask an obvious question. Faisal, how do you find the leaders and the organizational structure for what you are envisioning? Yeah.
Well, as Palestinians, our problems from day one has been leadership. And I don't want to get into that political side of it, but I think the leaders will emerge by themselves. We don't have to do a lot of looking. People who understand what I'm talking about and get inspired by it are likely to be our leaders in that area. And people that don't get it, they're not going to be the leaders of this idea, because you have to get it to lead it. In my conversation with people, there were some signs that there are some people who can become leaders of this process. And we don't need one leader. We need a group of inspired people who believe in the idea, but also, more importantly, who believe in Palestine and the need for Palestine to proceed forward, to get ahead, and to get out of the quagmire and the mud we are in right now.
Yeah. Saida, why don't you take questions from the students?
Yes, sure. Before I get from students, I would like to ask a professor who has a question for Ustaz Faisal.
Well, students first.
No, first you. Yes.
Okay. Dr. Saleh, Faisal Saleh, thank you for speaking overseas. I just arrived in Palestine. My name is David Courtney. I teach students who are beginning English in the program here. Do you think that the online presence has helped attract more outsiders to Palestine, increase their sympathy and understanding? Do you see any evidence for that? And does your organization, is it open to partnering with students or groups that want to promote Palestinian culture? And is that something that, are you thinking more about big picture theoretical ideas, or do you have specific, are you open to forming these kinds of relationships with, there might be students who are interested in starting such groups, maybe with your museum?
Sure, there are 2 or 3 questions together here. First of all, in our work, in our activities, we have noticed increased interest on the part of people around the world in the Palestinian issues. And whenever we present programming, we get about maybe 50% of the people participating in the programming are not Palestinian, but they are people who are interested in Palestine and people who support the Palestinian cause in many countries. We have people that join from Spain, from Portugal, from the UK, from South America, from India, from Pakistan, from the Middle East. And when we show a film, we may get like 200 people signing up for the film from 40 countries. And these films are all about Palestine. So we have solid evidence that presence in the cyberspace is very beneficial to the Palestinian cause, and long term, it will give us the opportunity to tell our story to the world. Right now, our ability to tell the story is controlled by the mainstream media in a lot of the countries that are not friendly to Palestine, such as the United States, France, England, Germany. So that answer to the first part of the question. The second part, the ideas that I'm talking about are open platform ideas. They're not something that's going to have a gatekeeper and only certain people can participate. It's open, that anybody will be able to join and add information and create their own activities and participate in the big platform. Just like in Facebook, you can go set up an account, you can do your own event on Facebook, you can do all kinds of things, obviously within certain guidelines. So you cannot control 10 million people. You have to have a democratic platform, and the platform needs to be open to everybody to participate, regardless of their political ideology, regardless of their religion, regardless of their ethnic background or whatever. It's going to be open to all Palestinians and Palestinians have to feel that's their place, that they're living, that's their country in outer space, basically.
Thank you, Ustaz Faisal. Now with Maya has a question.
Hi, Mr. Faisal. Hi, Mr. Faisal. Thank you for your speech. I have a question. I want to ask about the future of this somehow alternative cyber world. Wouldn't it have some threats as real life, but with a change of power dynamics, like hacking and falsification? How would that be dealt with? And how strong would the base of this platform be?
Well, there is technology that exists to fight hacking and to fight all this stuff. But we can't, just because we can get run over by a car in the street, it doesn't mean we're going to spend all our life at home. We have to be able to get out of our house and not be worried about getting run over by a car every minute of the day. Hacking is a fact of life, but it's manageable. There are all kinds of security. We have talented Palestinians who can hack the hackers and who can build systems that are less susceptible to hacking. And we have the technology exists to do that. We just need to be able to work at it. If we worry about hacking, nobody would ever send an email. Nobody would ever set up an account anywhere. So we can't. We have to go on. Life has to go on despite the risk of hacking. It's a fact of life, and it's just another thing you have to deal with.
Thank you, Jude. And then Umayma.
المايك مفتوح.
Okay. Jude, Umayma, and then Nick.
Since Palestinians are separated, as you discussed at the beginning, which manifests not only geographically, but politically, socially, and economically, which doesn't allow for us as Palestinians to live in a united way of life, let alone united as a people. How can your idea be applicable to all of the Palestinians who live at different wavelengths, since economically not everyone can afford to be a part of this cyber experience? So how does this idea, how can we apply this idea for all Palestinians and achieve maybe the final goal of the قضية الفلسطينية through unity?
Yeah, I think just your question answers itself, and this is how. One of the advantages and the benefits of this concept is to create that unity among Palestinians. The ability to, for you to talk to somebody in like a Shatila refugee camp in Lebanon, or to talk to somebody in the Jarash refugee camp in Jordan, or to communicate with a Palestinian in Chile, or a Palestinian in the United States, for you to be part of that conversation and to feel that you are the same people, that's a tremendous opportunity, and it's a great feeling. You know, that I've seen some films where they, I'm trying to remember the name of the film. We showed it recently. Apologize, I can't remember, but it was about a bunch of young people, like they're teenagers, that were corresponding from Palestine to Lebanon, and they're sending letters back and forth to each other, and they're having such a great time. And they, at one point, they met at the border between Lebanon and Israel, and it was just such a tremendous feeling among all the people, just be able to talk to people in those areas. Can you imagine, like, we have a Zoom call with Palestinians from 150 countries around the world, and there could be like 1,000 of us in that call, and we're all talking to each other, and then feeling that we are Palestinians and we are finally together in one place. You can't imagine how that feeling is. So yes, people have different political ideas, and there are all kinds of existing leadership and structures and all that. They'll all be threatened by this idea, because this idea would transcend transcend all that other stuff that we've been doing into something new. So there will be resistance against it, obviously, because people in charge are not going to like to see people like going somewhere else, you know. And they're like, you know, they're going to be dancing for a different tune than the tune they've been expected to dance to for the last, you know, 30, 40 years. So one thing very important about what I'm talking about, none of it is illegal under any jurisdiction. So everything we're talking about is legal, law-protected activities of peaceful, informational things that are allowed in the United States, in England, in all the countries. None of it is illegal. Nobody's going to come and tell us we're terrorists because we have a database that has our people that's open to the public and everybody can look at. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind. It's a peaceful, legitimate, rightful, protected by law activity that can be exercised by Palestinians anywhere they are.
Thank you. Umayma?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Faisal, for your talk. My question is, do you know any certain organizations or companies that works with the Palestinian youth, the youth that has some ideas and potential to work in the cyber space? And if you can provide us with some names of these groups or organizations.
I don't know offhand any specific groups, but all you have to do is Google them. So you already have the tools. You already have the tools of cyberspace. You see now why we're talking about this is because.
Cash, okay.
And by the way, at the museum we have a new program. It's called the Museum Ambassador Program, and we are working with people who want to become ambassadors for the museum, wherever they are, and help us communicate the museum's ideas and create awareness of the museum, and also help us identify talent in their area that we can feature in our programming. So any of you who are interested can go to our website under volunteer, and then they can send a request to become a museum ambassador if they have interest in that.
Thank you. I just would like to add, I mean, the idea, the notion of having elections or holding elections for 11 or 12 million Palestinians virtually, that's just an outstanding idea. Maybe you can touch on that, Faisal, but we want to first listen to Laith's question.
Like I'm gonna ask in Arabic, is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah. تفضل.
So عشان احنا لما ندرس على مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي فانه يعني عن القضيه الفلسطينيه في كثير يعني من الاحيان انه بيعملوا لنا بلوك على هاي الاشياء وإيش زي هيك، فانه مش هذا يعني بحد من حريه التعبير تاعتنا، يعني كيف بدنا نمارس هذا الشيء.
يعني انت بتحكي انه السلطات المسؤولة يعني في أي مكان ما تكون، يا إما في لبنان والأردن وهذا، راح يعملوا لك بلوك مشان ما تقدرش تحكي مع الناس برا. طيب بالضبط، يعني راح يسكروا الإنترنت عليك، مزبوط؟ هاي ما حدا بيقدر يسكر الإنترنت على الناس كلها لمدة طويلة يعني.
مش الانترنت ممكن يسكر الحساب.
You mean censorship too?
Censorship. راح يحاولوا يعملوا censorship، بس censorship long term ما راح تمشي. في آخر المطاف يعني راح censorship مش راح تمشي في العالم يعني. طبعا في عقبات قدام الأفكار هاي، وإحنا في الوقت الحاضر إحنا يعني بس بقدم هاي يعني كأفكار يعني مشان الناس يفكروا فيها. يعني ما في يعني خطة معينة لعمل أشياء هيك، احنا لازم نفكر انه في المستقبل هاي الاشياء اللي بتحكي عنها ما راح تكون تمشي يعني في العالم، لانه العالم ما بتحمل هاي الاشياء، وراح يكون في ضغط كثير على السلطات اللي يعني بتتحكم في الاشياء هي وتنتهك حقوق الانسان. يعني هاي انتهاكات لحقوق الانسان لما يمنعوا شخص من التعبير عن افكارهم خلال يعني الاتصالات الالكترونيه، الاشياء هيك يعني. فاحنا لازم نفكر 10 سنين من الوقت هذا. ما لازم نخلي العقبات الموجوده حاليا قدامنا تمنعنا من التفكير والتخطيط للقيام باعمال ابداعيه في المستقبل يعني.
أحمد and بشار.
صوتي عالي واضح؟
بالعربي.
عندي سؤال، انه ليش الانسان الفلسطيني او المؤسسات الغير حكوميه او الحكوميه كان الهدف الاول او الاولويه انه كانت تطالب بالحق الفلسطيني، بس اختلفت وتناضل عشان هذا الحق، بس اختلفت الوجهه لانه صارت تناضل عشان التضامن العالمي. لانه من وجهه نظرك شو كان الدافع انه احنا صرنا نسعى للتضامن العالمي اكثر من انه صرنا نسعى للحقوق الفلسطينيه؟
للتحرير قصدك؟
لا.
Very good question.
الافكار اللي انا بطرحها مش افكار بديله عن المطالبه بالحقوق الفلسطينيه، بالعكس الافكار اللي انا بطرحها ممكن انها تضعنا في موقف يمكننا من متابعه الحقوق الفلسطينيه بصوره اقوى او بصوره لها تاثير اكثر مما بنعمله حاليا يعني. المعلومات في السايبر سبيس هي قوة. It has power and it would give us the ability to pursue our rights and pursue them legally and force the world to deal with our situation. Right now, nobody's listening to us. Like بالمثل العربي عبال مين يلي بترقص في العتمة يعني. بدنا نرقص في الشمس في ضوء الشمس مشان العالم كله يشوف رقصتنا. فلازم يعني نطلع من المشكله تاعتنا اللي احنا فيها هلا. ما حداش شايفنا هلا، ما حداش بيسمع عنا، ولا حدا بيهتم فينا. فاحنا لازم نعمل احنا الكيان تبعنا ونكون موحدين. الوحده مهمة جدا، لأنه ما راح يكون يعني إشي في العالم إذا ما توحدناش، وما راح نتوحد على الأرض، لأنه هذا فلان بدش يشتغل مع فلان، وهذا مش عارف إيش، وهذا الرئيس وهذا الملك وهذا المدير وهذا مش عارف إيش، وكل واحد داير باله على حاله وما حدا داير باله على الشعب الفلسطيني يعني. فالشعب الفلسطيني لازم يأخذ زمام المبادرة بإيديه. إحنا لازم نعمل لحالنا. ما حدا راح يقدم لنا أشياء على صحن من ذهب يعني. راح يضربونا مش راح يقدموا لنا إشي. فإحنا لازم نأخذ زمام المبادرة.
Sorry for the interruption, but Bashar had a follow-up question, I guess.
Sure.
because انه في مؤسسات بدون ذكر اسماء مؤسسات عديده انه طمحت وراء اللي هي المصالح الشخصيه او المصالح الماديه.
أيوة.
يعني مثلا اذا بدنا نحكي عن مثلا التمويل المشروط او تمويل الاتحاد الاوروبي، في مؤسسات فلسطينيه كانت تناضل عشان الحق الفلسطيني، قبلت انها توقع هذه الاتفاقيه، رغم انها هاي الاتفاقيه بتنص على انه الاعتراف بمنظمات باحزاب منظمه التحرير انها احزاب ارهابيه. فالقصد انه بعض المؤسسات الفلسطينيه صارت تطمح على انه هي تناضل عشان الحق، مش عشان الحق الاساسي الفلسطيني، وانما عشان الحق المادي او الحق الشخصي.
هاي المشاكل كلها بتنحل لما يكون في يعني حريه ويكون في مشاركه من كل الشعب الفلسطيني في القرارات والاتجاهات بدون التحكم في هاي من قبل أي حزب، من قبل أي فصيلة، من قبل أي اتجاه. فالكيان في السايبر سبيس يعني بيعطينا فرصة لتحقيق الديمقراطية عند الشعب الفلسطيني، وخلق يعني مكان لتوحيد الشعب الفلسطيني بغض النظر عن تياراتهم ويعني الدين والسياسي والاشياء. بنكون يعني احنا كلنا فلسطينيين يعني، وبكون نشتغل لصالح فلسطين. وانسى كل الحكام، انسى كل المسؤولين حاليا، لانه في المستقبل في فرصة للتخلص من كل هاي الاشياء يعني.
نتخلص منهم ان شاء الله. Ahmad, you still have a question?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Beverly. Do you have?
We have a question from Jalal Salame that I think hasn't been answered yet. I just want to slide this in.
Sure.
Is the option of the cyber nation going to put pressure if the Palestinians resist again? And will that result in facilitating the colonial project?
Could you repeat that again?
Yeah. Is the option of a cyber nation going to put pressure if the Palestinians resist again? And would that result in facilitating the colonial project?
Yeah. The cyberspace option is not an alternative to any other legitimate Palestinian stances and activities and positions. It is in addition. It is a way to transcend the obstacles we have now and to operate at a higher level that allow us to be more effective in telling our Palestinian story and pursuing our rights. It's not an alternative to other things that we're doing now. It's in addition to it. It's just a different form of coalescing and gathering all the Palestinians together so that they can be a powerful force that can be effective in advancing the Palestinian cause. Right now, like I said, we are divided in so many pieces. We have no power, we have no impact, nobody's listening to us. And it's time that we change that. And we're not gonna change it by having 600 different groups in 1,700 different geographic districts that are not connected together and have no way of talking with one voice.
Thanks for responding to that question, Faisal.
Thank you, Faisal. Maybe there's one point that you can touch on is, as I said before, about مهرجان الحياة المحظورة is the role of art and culture in unifying the Palestinians under this umbrella, within this virtual platform or virtual state that you are advocating for. And you have been working so hard on this, how the role and how to utilize Palestinian art and culture in unifying Palestinians everywhere they live.
Yeah, well, first of all, we have been trying to use art to strengthen the Palestinian identity. We showcase different types of art. We showcase Palestinian talent. We create something that Palestinians can be proud of and can be proud to be Palestinians. A part of this artistic effort, we bring the art to the world. We are going to, for instance, next year, we are going to be at the Venice Biennale, which is the art world biggest event of the year. It's like the art Olympics. And we're going to be there showcasing Palestinian arts for the world to see side by side with 180 nations there. So the art is a way to unify people, but more importantly, the art is an unobstructed channel that we have to the world that we need to take advantage of it. Political channels are difficult because they're easily obstructed and the people get defensive about it. But people don't argue much with art. You know, you can get your message through art a lot easier than you can get it through political discourse.
And resistance. I think Ahmed and عمرو بالعربي فيش عمرو you don't say الواو.
هاي واو الجماعة.
If you allow me, Faisal, for time constraint, you will take Ahmed's and Amr's questions together. If you can answer them together.
Yeah.
احكي بالعربي.
اوكي.
سؤالي هو يعني شو الهدف من التغير مثلا التغير هذا راح يصير حتى في حال يعني هو الهدف انك توصل معلومات او ترسل رساله، شو الهدف من هاي الرساله؟ يعني غير انه هو اكثر شيء يعني فند، فان احنا بدنا في اشياء اكثر قيمه من الفند يعني
فند متعه يعني؟ لا فندنج
بمعنى ان يعني التمويل كان يعني هو التضامن العالمي اللي سواه التغير هذا واللي سواه تعاطف مع فلسطين دخل قصص تمويل مثلا، بس بنفس الوقت صهر المقاومه الفلسطينيه وصهر كل القيم الفلسطينيه اللي كان المفروض احنا ندافع عن حالنا. يعني السؤال التغيير لازم يكون بهدف ان احنا نغير من حالنا ونعطي المعلومات لنا واحنا نقنع، ولا نغير للعالم والعالم يعرف معلومات، طالما ما احنا يعني فيش يعني على الواقع شيء مثلا تغيير في الجغرافي شيء ثاني.
Okay, and Amr, thank you, Ahmed.
I think that about this occupation that we can win against occupation without communicating with each other. That all organizations and the societies and companies have to share and to collect all people and all citizens to make the war against this occupation. I think that it is the main solution. It is the only solution for this war between us and with this occupation. And this about just social media and about other methods. I think that they don't work. They never work in this case because Palestine is surrounded by now by many countries. United Arab Emirates and Israel and many countries now, not just Israel. Now, so we need to work together with many countries now, with Egypt and Iran, Qatar, Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, all these countries together to win against this occupation. Yes, it's my opinion.
Okay. بحكي لك بالعربي. اوكي. اولا ما في حدا راح يجي يحرر فلسطين لنا. اوكي. اولا وما لما تحكي تمويل يعني حدا راح يعطيك فلوس مشان تعمل شيء فيه. انسى التمويل. اي تمويل راح يكون احنا راح نعمل تمويلنا احنا، يعني الشعب الفلسطيني بيقدر يمول حاله يعني في المستقبل. يعني في قدرات فلسطينية موجودة، لما الفلسطينيين يشتغلوا مع بعض ويعملوا حالهم موحدين بيقدروا يعني يحققوا أشياء مش معقولة يعني. فإحنا لازم نغير تفكيرنا، لأنه الدنيا راح تتغير بعد 10 سنين، راح تكون متغيرة جدا، ولازم احنا نكون هناك يعني مع التغيير، لازم نكون في طلائع التغيير. مش لازم نخلي الاشياء اللي موجوده حاليا يعني تلهينا عن المستقبل وايش راح يكون المستقبل. بعرفش إذا يعني أنا أعطيتكم أفكار شوي يعني التفكير فيها. ما عنديش يعني ما عنديش حلول يعني حاليا، يعني إنك ما في حل سهل يعني. احنا مواجهين عدو من اقوى القوى في العالم يعني، لانه متحكمين في مصادر القوة، ومتحكمين في الولايات المتحدة، ومتحكمين في كل العالم يعني، بصورة اقتصادية وبصورة سياسية بصور ما احنا نتخيلها لسه. فالعقبات قدامنا عقبات صعبة جدا يعني، فلازم نكون يعني ذكيين جدا في مواجهة هاي التحديات، ولازم نكون أذكى من العدو، ويعني نفكر كيف إحنا نستغل الفرص المتاحة لنا في المستقبل. الأشياء اللي إلنا قوة فيها لازم نستعملها ونكثر منها، والأشياء اللي هي ضعف عندنا لازم نتخطاها ونركز على الأشياء اللي إحنا بنكون قويين فيها.
Thank you أستاذ فيصل. تفضل.
بدي أضيف كمان شغلة بالنسبة لموضوع التمويل. إحنا كشعب فلسطيني يعني إنه الدول برضه بيشوفونا بس إنه كل ما صار شيء فلسطين خلص إنه دعم مادي وخلص بسكت، يعني إحنا بس يعني شايفيننا كأنه بس يعني بس بدنا مصاري وشيء زي هيك، إنه جعانين مصاري.
احنا بدناش دعم حدا. اوكي،
احنا بنفس الموضوع، بس هم يعني كبار دول برا هيك شايفين احنا. لا
اسمع لي لاحكي لك والله شوي، ولا قطعان بحديثك يعني. احنا ما بدنا دعم حدا، ما بدنا دعمهم، بس بدنا يحلوا عنا. خليهم يحلوا عنا. ما بدنا دعم، ما بدنا مساعدة، احنا بندعم حالنا، بس خلونا يعني سيبونا يعني.
ايش من الدعم
هم راكبين زي الحمير، راكبين يعني في كل مكان. حلوا عنا، احنا قادرين بدعم نفسنا، بس حلوا عنا، خلينا.
Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry we're out of time, but if there is a will, there is a way, and you are the generation who will make the difference. Okay, and what Ustaz Faisal just presented as a dream that he's working so hard on into the new generation, you can continue. As he said, it's not an alternative, it's not a different path, it's just a complementary path toward achieving your own goals and our aspirations as Palestinians. I want to thank Ustaz Faisal. Before Beverly, do you have any questions? Would you like to add and conclude, please?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Faisal. And if people would go to the museum website, they can sign up for your weekly announcements of the events and see some of the power of these ideas. But also, I think we forgot to tell you that many of our students are online with students around the world. And so they have more experience with this than my generation does. Everyone in that room has more experience with this than I do. Thank you so much.
Just one final thought. One final thought I want to leave you with. We have two choices. بنضل نرقص في العتمة ولا بنغير اللايتنج يعني.
Thank you so much, Ustaz Faisal. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you all. See you. Bye.